Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are really strapping in for what looks like an incredible shortcut. Not a quick fix, let's be clear, but a properly engineered system. It's designed to take you, the composer who already gets music theory, who knows your way around Cubase, past that really frustrating stage, making work that sounds, and I'm quoting here, predictable, cliche, or just boring.
That is the wall, isn't it? It's this invisible barrier. Every composer who's technically got it together seems to, you know the theory, you know the software functions, but what's missing is that industry system.
Exactly.
And those very specific specialized techniques you absolutely need to move from, let's say, weak suspense sketches to, well, the course promises 3 screen-ready, genuinely spine-chilling orchestral cues.
And that's the mission for us today, right? To really analyze the blueprint for that professional leap. It's all laid out in the curriculum of dark scoring and horror orchestration in Cubase.
It is. And that transition, that's the critical thing. Moving from maybe a hobbyist level or even semi-pro to sounding truly professional, ready for the big screen or the next big game.
That distinction, it's everything. Knowing the theory versus actually applying it to create cinematic terror. You know, if you've ever loaded up your expensive, massive string library and you find those dramatic stabs you wrote, they sound more like a decent student orchestra warming up, not that demonic nightmare you envision.
The drones. The drones feel flat, not suffocating. It's a common frustration.
It is. So if that sounds familiar, this deep dive into the professional workflow, this is absolutely for you.
And the core issue here, it's usually not a lack of talent. It's more a lack of focused, systematic immersion. You just can't piece together a pro workflow from scattered YouTube tutorials, right?
No way.
So the School on X solution, the source material highlights this. They approach it with immersion learning. They compare it, quite cleverly, I think, to how kids master a language.
Oh, interesting comparison.
Yeah, it's not about random lessons here and there. It's systematic absorption, total immersion, until you actually achieve fluency. Professional fluency in this case.
And they seem to back this up pretty heavily with what they're calling the ecosystem for mastery. This isn't just, sit back and watch some videos.
Not at all.
It's multimodal. It seems engineered to hit every learning style. We're talking 247 video modules, proper cinematic breakdowns, apparently. Then there are 247 audio guides, too, for training your ear on the go.
Which is smart. Commute time becomes learning time.
Right. Plus, comprehensive text guides covering orchestration techniques, shortcuts, the lot, and even visual maps, maybe for chord structures or progressions.
It's the whole environment. That's what seems key here. But the element that really jumps out, the truly revolutionary bit, I think, is the tech edge they've built in. It tackles the single biggest bottleneck for self-taught composers.
Which is?
Instant professional-level feedback. Talk about this AI horror music coach, a personal GPT.
Okay, that definitely got my attention too when I read through the description. Because normally, in the pro world, getting that kind of critique on subtle stuff...
Yeah, like frequency clashes or dynamics.
Or specific orchestration choices, yeah. That usually means hiring an expensive mentor or maybe having a scoring assistant on payroll. So what does this AI coach actually do, technically?
Well, this seems to be the paradigm shift they're aiming for. The AI isn't just like checking for wrong notes like a basic theory checker. Based on what's described, this personal GPT acts more like a hyper-aware assistant.
Okay, give me an example.
All right, say you use an extended technique from Module 4, like a sol ponticello string effect. The AI could potentially check if the dynamics you've programmed align with the required articulation velocity in your sample library.
Stopping those stabs sounding too soft or weak.
Exactly. Or, crucially, it analyzes your mixes, looking for those common spectral errors you get in horror music, like maybe too much buildup in the low mids that turns your terrifying rumble into just mud.
Right, kills the impact.
Or inconsistencies in your reverb sends, maybe preventing that true sense of spatial claustrophobia you were going for. It gives you instant, actionable, technical refinement that accelerates the skill learning way beyond what you could typically get, even with intermittent human feedback.
Okay, that's genuinely impressive if it works as described. A huge time and potentially money saver.
Right. So let's dig into the curriculum itself then, because this is where the system really starts building that professional foundation. Modules 1, 2, and 3 lay the groundwork, the mindset, and the essential Cubase setup.
Yeah, Module 1, Foundations of Horror Scoring.
Yeah.
It promises to teach, and I quote, the psychology of fear in music and what makes sound unsettling. Now, someone who knows theory might think,
I know the tritone exists. I know diminished chords are tense. Why do I need a whole module on this?
right, exactly that question. Why is this psychological deep dive the absolute first step for professional work?
Because a professional score, especially horror, it's basically applied psychoacoustics. It's not just assembling notes that sound dark. This module seems designed to move you beyond just identifying the cliches like jump scare stingers or whatever.
Okay.
It helps you analyze why they work on a primal level, and crucially, how to evolve them, make them your own. Take low-frequency rumbles, for instance. We know deep down that subharmonic information, say 20 to 100 hertz, triggers this instinctive, almost physical anxiety response.
Yeah, you feel it more than hear it sometimes.
Exactly. It's often linked to that feeling of pressure or some unseen large threat nearby. Understanding that mechanism that it's tapping into a basic survival response lets you manipulate it deliberately, with intent.
So it's the difference between just grabbing a random bass synth patch versus carefully crafting a rumble that sits precisely in that chest-rattling 40-60 hertz sweet spot.
While also making sure you leave enough headroom so the dialogue isn't completely swamped later in the mix, it's technical and psychological precision.
Got it. Making the theory intentional, based on human instinct. Okay, so once that mindset's locked in, Module 2 tackles the big efficiency challenge, navigating Cubase for orchestral scoring. This must address the speed gap.
Oh, absolutely. The professional world runs on deadlines. Revisions are constant. You just have to be fast. This module forces you to, quote, master Cubase as a creative workstation. Because when you're dealing with a massive orchestral score,
How massive are we talking?
easily 150, sometimes 200 tracks, or even more for complex cues, an amateur workflow just dragging and dropping stuff randomly, it completely collapses under that weight. It becomes chaos.
So this is about the practical nuts and bolts. Setting up proper DAW templates that don't just load your favorite sounds, but actually route them correctly from the get-go?
Precisely. It mentions professional track organization, smart routing strategies. Think about using VCA faders, for example, to quickly manage entire instrument families, all strings, all brass, with one fader.
Saves so much time.
Huge time saver. Advanced color coding for visual clarity across hundreds of tracks. Complex routing setups that let you do parallel processing, maybe sending synths and strings to the same reverb bus without introducing latency nightmares.
This is basically about institutionalizing speed, isn't it?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
If you're spending 20 minutes hunting through menus for a specific cello articulation you need right now, you've completely lost the creative momentum.
Been there, done that.
We all have. Mastering those essential shortcuts, those workflow enhancers, it just eliminates that feeling of fumbling around in the DAW. Makes you faster, makes collaboration smoother if you're sending sessions to mixers or other composers.
Okay, workspace optimized, speed achieved. Now Module 3 gets to the really dark stuff, crafting dark harmonic palettes. This is where the theory starts to sound genuinely terrifying. Dissonance, clusters, unconventional progressions.
This is where you actively bend music theory towards emotional manipulation. It details, as you would expect, the precise application of tritones, diminished intervals, those dense cluster chords. They really are the backbone of modern scoring tension.
But again, for the advanced listener who already knows these terms, what's the deeper insight here?
It's likely in the application and control. For example, how do you layer a massive 12-note cluster chord across the orchestra, but maintain enough clarity so it doesn't just become a muddy, indistinct wash of sound?
Right, that requires serious skill.
It requires advanced dynamic control, careful spectral management, probably using EQ strategically within the template, techniques likely taught in this module.
And the source material specifically flags a deeper dive into modal shifts for tension. It calls out Locrian and Phrygian modes by name. If you know your modes, what's the unique horror application here?
Well, the professional insight probably lies in using them for unresolved progressions. Locrian mode, with its inherently unstable flat second and that tritone built right in,
Yeah.
it just screams instability.
Yeah, it feels inherently wrong.
And Phrygian, with its lowered second degree, gives you that sense of ancient exotic tread. But the course likely teaches how to use these not just as static scales to noodle over, but as momentary harmonic pivots.
Explain that. Pivots.
Like, you might be into generally dissonant harmonic space, and then you briefly shift the harmony into Locrian for just a beat or two to really spike the tension, create maximum unease, before maybe returning to your dissonant home bass.
So it's about controlled bursts of extreme instability.
Exactly. The key concept across this module seems to be sustained, deliberate discomfort. using harmonic techniques that constantly deny the listener the satisfying resolution they crave, keeping the emotional pressure cooker on high across longer narrative stretches. Shifting gears slightly. Section 2, modules 4 and 5, we move beyond the harmony and the DAW setup into the really specific manipulation of instrumental timbre and time, creating sonic unease through texture and rhythm.
Module 4 sounds like the heart of sonic brutality, orchestral textures for fear, focusing on layering instruments, creating sonic unease, dynamic tension. This sounds like where professionals turn perfectly nice instruments into generators of pure terror.
Pretty much. This is where you learn the crucial difference between just generic playing techniques and articulations that are specifically unsettling. The module description mentions high-string tremolos, a classic, sure,
Always effective.
but it likely goes deeper, focusing on the specific quality of sound, like the thin, unstable, scratchy sound you get from Sol Ponticello.
Bowing near the bridge, right.
Exactly. It brings out all these high, non-harmonic overtones. It sounds fragile, glassy, almost insect-like, perfect for deep anxiety. Think Bernard Herrmann in Psycho.
Iconic sound.
And the chorus probably contrasts that with, say, Sol Tasto bowing over the fingerboard, which gives you a much breathier, more distant, ethereal sound. Maybe for moments of psychological distance or dissociation, it's about choosing the right texture for the right emotional beat.
That focus on the quality, the specific placement of the bow, that's key. And amateurs often neglect the low end, maybe just throwing in some big bass drum hits. What does the course teach about orchestrating low brass and percussion to create those really powerful rumbles?
Yeah, it's not just about loud hits, it's about sustained sonic pressure. This involves using instruments like tubas, contrabassoons, maybe even contrabass clarinets, right down in their lowest, muddiest registers, sometimes muted to make the sound even darker and more ominous.
Combined with percussion.
Oh yeah, massive low-tuned percussion, not just big booms, but sounds that vibrate. Things like large tam-tams allowed to resonate, maybe low piano string scrapes, potentially processed bass drums. It's about designing this persistent subharmonic layer that you feel in your chest.
Creating that feeling of something enormous, unseen, just approaching.
Precisely. Rather than just sudden loud noises. And then, of course, there's the mention of extended techniques for woodwinds. This is where things get really weird.
Makey clicks and breath sounds.
Exactly. Key clicks, airy breath noises blown through the instrument without producing a pitch. Multiphonics, where you get strange chord-like sounds, overblown notes that squeal and crack. Pushing traditional instruments into completely unsettling, almost alien territory creates unique sonic signatures.
Okay, that covers texture. Then we hit Module 5, rhythmic uncertainty and tension, exploring how composers use time itself or the lack of it as a tension tool.
Rhythm is comfort. Predictability is safety. So the horror composer's job is often to violently pull that rhythmic comfort blanket away from the listener. This module seems focused on mastering things like asymmetrical rhythms.
Uneven groupings like fives or sevens.
Yeah, or constantly shifting meters. Imagine being in a standard 44-time signature, setting up a pulse, and then suddenly throwing in a single bar of 78. The audience doesn't consciously count it, usually.
No, but you feel it.
You feel that hiccup, that unnatural stutter that disrupts the expected flow. It's instantly destabilizing.
That idea of pulse disruption for instability, deliberately breaking expectation, that feels like a hallmark of really high-level scoring.
It absolutely creates psychological instability. You can also use polyrhythms, having different layers of the orchestra playing in different, often conflicting time signatures or rhythmic patterns simultaneously.
Creates a kind of churning anxiety underneath everything.
Exactly. Feels like things are pulling apart, like the underlying structure is unstable. And then there's the most sophisticated concept here, I think, often underestimated by amateurs: the power of silence.
Silence as a compositional tool. The ultimate canvas for dread, maybe?
Absolutely. The course apparently teaches you when not to play, specifically to amplify tension. Think about it. Silence, especially after a long, intense crescendo, builds expectation to a fever pitch. It forces the listener's brain to fill that void. Their senses are on high alert.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Precisely. And whatever sound does follow that silence, whether it's a tiny, high woodwind squeak or a massive, sudden orchestral cluster, its impact is amplified tenfold. Because the listener's attention is completely, utterly focused in that moment of silence. It's the point of maximum vulnerability, and the composer manipulates that strategically.
All right, section 3 feels like where the traditional orchestral mastery we've been talking about really merges with modern techniques,
Mhm.
getting composers ready for scoring current games and films, looking at modules 6 and 7.
Yeah, Module 6 is explicitly sound design meets orchestra. The requirement now, it says, is to blend orchestral writing with design sounds for modern horror scoring. You pretty much have to be able to do this if you want to score anything released in, say, the last 10 or 15 years.
Right, pure orchestra is rarer now, especially in genre work, but this can't just be about, layering a generic synth pad under the strings. What specific fusion techniques are likely taught here?
It's got to be about deep synthesis and integration. The description implies methods for layering synths with orchestral instruments to achieve very specific textural effects. For instance,
Go on.
you might use a subtractive synth patch with a really sharp, aggressive filter envelope to reinforce the attack, the spit, of a low brass stab. Gives it synthetic power and edge, but you still keep the organic weight and complexity of the real brass.
So blending the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And crucially, it mentions designing eerie ambiences directly within Cubase, moving beyond just dragging in pre-made ambient samples. This implies using Cubase's built-in synths, samplers, and effects chains to craft unique, evolving soundscapes that perfectly match the mood.
And it specifically mentions integrating granular textures and noise. Now, what exactly are granular textures, and why are they so vital for creating a unique score?
Okay, granular synthesis is fascinating. It basically involves taking tiny snippets of sound individual grains, often just milliseconds long from a sample. And then you repeat these tiny grains, manipulate them, stretch them, pitch shift them, randomize their playback. The resulting sound is often highly unstable, glitchy, constantly shifting, almost like digital insects crawling around.
Wow, okay. Sounds inherently unsettling.
It is. It sounds organic because it comes from a real sound source, but also broken malfunctioning. It perfectly embodies psychological distress, decay, or maybe technological horror. Using granular textures and carefully sculpted noise allows you to create a truly signature horror sound that is almost impossible to replicate just using standard orchestral libraries. It gives your score a unique fingerprint.
Right, makes sense. So once we have these complex, potentially hybrid textures, we move into the realm of real professional polish, Module 7, Dynamics and Space for Suspense. This sounds like the module that takes music that's technically correct and makes it sound truly cinematic.
Absolutely spot on. This is where you learn to, quote, harness dynamics and spatial mixing to intensify fear. Amateur scores often suffer from being dynamically flat. Either everything's kind of medium loud or it's just constantly blasting.
Leads to listener fatigue, right? Kills the impact.
Totally. Professionals use dynamic shaping, controlling the volume envelope over time as a primary tool to dictate the emotional arc of a cue. Long, slow crescendos building dread, sudden drops into silence, explosive peaks for shocks. Volume tells the story.
And what about the spatial side? How do pro mixers use panning and depth to create disorientation?
Panning becomes a psychological weapon in horror. You can use extreme stereo width, placing sounds hard left or hard right to suggest threats moving just off screen, playing with the listener's peripheral awareness.
Makes you want to look over your shoulder.
Exactly. Or you can use subtle, perhaps automated, inconsistent panning. Maybe a sound drifts slowly from left to center, then snaps back. It induces this subliminal sense of disorientation, makes the listener feel physically unbalanced, like the sound itself is warping the space around them.
That's clever. And the course description makes a point of the distinction between using reverb for claustrophobia versus vastness. That's a really interesting dichotomy. How's that achieved technically?
It comes down to meticulous control over the reverb parameters, mainly pre-delay and decay time, but also diffusion and EQ. For claustrophobia, you'd typically use very short pre-delays, making the reflections hit almost immediately after the dry sound.
Like a small, hard room.
Exactly. And short, dense decay times. Maybe even adding some subtle distortion to the reverb tail to make it feel unpleasant, oppressive. Makes the sonic space feel unnaturally small, like it's pressing in on you.
And for vastness.
The opposite. Longer pre-delays to suggest distance. Massive decay times, maybe 5-10 seconds or even more, creating that feeling of infinite, empty space. Often combined with heavy filtering, rolling off the high end of the reverb tail, so it feels dark and indistinct as it fades into nothingness. It's about deliberately designing the perceived space to heighten the specific mood, trapping the listener or making them feel lost and exposed. Okay, now we hit the practical application phase. All those technical skills in harmony, texture, rhythm, space, now they get woven into actual narrative structure. Modules 8, 9, and 10 are all about the art of timing, cue development, and storytelling with sound.
Module 8 is building tension arcs. The goal here is structuring musical tension so it escalates effectively across a whole cue or even a whole scene. This sounds like the crucial difference between just writing a cool, scary loop and crafting a compelling piece of dramatic scoring.
Absolutely. A professional score isn't static. It breathes with a narrative. It's built on sustained buildup and release. This module likely teaches those classic, crescendo-driven terror cues, the long-form builds that define a scene's rising action and emotional trajectory.
How do you manage that over, say, several minutes without it just becoming loud noise?
Through layered escalation strategies, you don't just turn everything up at once, you stack elements strategically. Maybe you start with just a subtle rhythmic pulse. Then you introduce a dissonant harmonic layer. Then you weave in specific, unsettling textures, those soul ponticello strings, maybe some granular sounds. Then the low brass rumble starts to creep in.
Adding layers of threat.
Exactly. And the critical skill here, which this module must cover, is knowing how to stack all those elements without creating frequency mud, ensuring that even at the point of maximum intensity, there's still clarity. You can still perceive the different layers. That leads into designing the structure of the peak itself and how you release that tension afterwards. Peak and release design.
Got it. Then we tackle the big one, the iconic horror moment in Module 9, scoring for jump scares and shocks. Deconstructing the technical side of maximizing the impact of those sudden scares.
Yeah, this requires precision that borders on sonic engineering. It covers the absolute necessity of sudden, extreme dynamic contrasts, often starting from near silence, maybe PPP, pianissimo,
Whisper quiet.
and then instantly jumping to FFF, fortissimo, maximum possible volume in a fraction of a second. And the orchestration choices are key for maximum fright. Usually involves very tight, focused, percussive stabs, think sharp snare hits, maybe metallic sounds combined with high-energy orchestral cluster hits, designed to be sharp, piercing, brutal, often emphasizing the high-frequency spectrum that cuts right through.
And what separates the amateur jump scare hit that feels clumsy from the professional one that makes you leap out of your seat? The outline mentions timing music with on-screen action. It has to land perfectly.
Oh, one frame off and it's ruined. Absolutely. In film scoring or game scoring, where you're hitting specific animation cues, timing is completely non-negotiable. This module has to provide the workflow for achieving frame-accurate synchronization.
How do you do that in practice?
We're talking about meticulously managing the start times of your MIDI notes or audio samples relative to the time code of the picture. Using DIW features like quantization, maybe nudging regions by tiny amounts, sometimes even using slight negative pre-delay on certain tracks, effectively making the sound start before the beat, so the percussive transient at the very start of the sound lands precisely on the visual cue, the exact frame you need it to.
Wow, that level of precision.
That fraction of a second, as the original script noted, is the difference between an audience genuinely flinching and maybe just laughing because it felt off.
Right. Okay, so moving beyond the immediate shock, Module 10 seems to focus on the long game of dread. Writing for psychological horror. Quoting the course again, not all horror is loud, sometimes subtle is scarier.
This shows versatility, doesn't it? Psychological horror often relies far more on creating a lingering sense of unease, a creeping dread. This is often achieved through minimalist motifs and drones.
Less is more in this case.
Often, yes. The power can be in extreme repetition and simplicity. Imagine a single, unchanging, dissonant interval, maybe a minor second, played very softly by just one or two instruments, repeating over and over. It just wears down the listener's nerves, their patience. It requires sparse orchestration, using thin textures deliberately, focusing on the strategic use of silence or near silence to make every tiny musical event that does happen feel incredibly significant.
And my favorite concept mentioned here, subtle sonic foreshadowing, planting musical seeds.
Yes, this is really sophisticated narrative scoring. It's about planting musical clues early on that hint at future dread, often subconsciously for the audience at first.
Give an example.
Okay, maybe every time a character references a past trauma or enters a specific location tied to that trauma, you introduce a very specific, unsettling musical motif, perhaps played by a unique, memorable sound like that bowed vibraphone with heavy reverb idea. This motif doesn't resolve, it just hangs there.
So it builds association.
Exactly. It doesn't have an immediate payoff, but every time it returns later in the film or game, it confirms the audience's growing subconscious fear about where the narrative is heading. You're essentially scoring the subtext of the script, linking themes and ideas musically. Very powerful when done well.
Okay, we've journeyed through the entire skill set, the psychology, the tech, the textures, the timing, the storytelling. Section 5 now brings it all home. It focuses on that final, absolutely crucial step, taking all this refined knowledge and actually professionalizing it. Modules 11 and 12.
Right, Module 11 is From Cue to Scene, Practical Scoring Projects. This sounds like the proving ground, where you take everything you've learned from Modules 1 through 10 and apply it directly by scoring actual horror scenes, actual sequences. This transition from just theoretical exercises to applying it all within a real narrative context, that's critical for solidifying the professional workflow.
And this isn't just about writing the music, is it? It mentions learning the professional process of scene analysis and spotting. That means figuring out exactly where the music needs to start, where it needs to stop.
How long the build needs to be, where the peak emotional moment is, where it needs to pull back for dialogue. All those decisions that connect the music directly to the picture.
So, matching the musical arcs to the narrative arcs. If the tension in the scene peaks visually and then dissolves into a moment of quiet relief, your music has to mirror that perfectly. It's the storytelling component again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for any working composer, the outline mentions developing a workflow for quick, creative iteration. That is indispensable. Professionals constantly get notes, requests for changes, revisions, often on very short notice.
Can we make the ending bigger? Can you shave 2 seconds off the intro?
All the time. You need a system, likely building on that template from Module 2 and maybe using the AI coach feedback loop that allows you to make those changes quickly and efficiently without rebuilding the cue from scratch every time. This module seems designed to prepare you for that reality.
Okay, practical application mastered. And then finally, Module 12, preparing your horror portfolio. Because the skill is only truly maximized when you can successfully monetize it, when you can present it professionally.
This is the essential final step, the packaging and delivery. It talks about mixing and mastering, but specifically for the aesthetics of horror. Making sure your final tracks have the necessary dynamic range, spectral clarity, but also maybe that specific larger-than-life cinematic sound, or that deliberately crushed lo-fi texture if appropriate, getting the final polish right.
And crucially, it teaches the business side, the practicalities, exporting stems and deliverables.
This is where so many talented composers, even really good ones, fall short. They deliver beautiful music, maybe just as a stereo MP3.
And the filmmaker or game developer can't actually use it properly in their final mix.
Exactly. They need stems. And they need them correctly formatted and labeled. This means providing separate printed stereo audio files for logical instrument groupings. You know, all your high strings on one stem, low strings on another, brass, percussion, synths, drones, maybe effects hits, all separate.
Usually at specific sample rates and bit depths.
Typically, yes. Often 48 kilohertz sample rate, 24-bit depth is standard for film and game audio post-production. They need these stems so their dialogue editors and sound designers can easily balance your music against all the other audio elements. This module ensures you know exactly how to label, organize, and export these files professionally. It removes that friction point for potential clients.
That specialization in just the delivery format, that alone can make you seem more professional and easier to work with.
Hugely. And that's key to building a portfolio that actually sells, especially when you're targeting that highly competitive but also rapidly growing market of indie filmmakers and horror game developers who need composers who understand their specific workflow needs.
So if we just zoom out and look at the entire journey mapped out here, the value proposition of this course structure, it seems genuinely staggering. You're getting the whole system.
The psychology behind the fear.
The deep Cubase mastery for efficiency.
The specific technical articulations and textures.
Advanced harmony, rhythmic disruption.
Spatial mixing, sound design fusion.
Narrative structuring, jump scare precision.
Psychological subtlety. And finally, the professional deliverables. It's comprehensive. And that multimodal advantage we talked about earlier, that's what aims to deliver the transformation. Visual learners get the maps, auditory learners use the audio guides, everyone gets the hands-on practice. And when you layer on top of that systematic approach the potential for instant, specific technical feedback from that AI horror coach, you're really optimizing the learning curve.
The source mentioned student examples, didn't it? Jonas, Maya, Luca.
Yeah, highlighting specific outcomes. Licensing work, structuring suspense better, getting improved mixes faster thanks to leveraging the AI feedback. It suggests the system works in practice.
And then there's the straight value comparison. This whole professional toolkit, this engineered system, priced at $97 according to the material. You compare that to traditional mentorships or specialized courses.
Which can easily run $1,000 or much, much more. It really reframes it as a focused investment in a very specific, marketable skill set. one that could potentially start paying you back pretty quickly with even one small gig.
Plus, for this founding cohort, they're adding acceleration packages, those bonuses, designed to just eliminate setup friction and get you working faster.
Exactly. That first bonus, the AQ to Screen Breakdown Pack. Deconstructing famous horror cues inside a Cubase project.
Seeing the actual MIDI, the automation, the mixing choices, that's pure gold. Reverse engineering professional work.
Priceless insight. Then bonus 2, the R-Dark orchestral template for Cubase. That immediately solves the workflow bottleneck for Module 2.
Just load it up and go. A pre-built professional setup, routed, organized to industry standards. Huge time saver.
Massive. And bonus 3, the exclusive Horror Composer networking call. That's direct access. Meeting indie filmmakers, game developers who are actively looking for this exact kind of music, building connections.
That could be worth the price of admission alone for someone trying to break in.
Potentially, yes. And they stress the scarcity of this founding cohort is strictly limited. Once those doors close, this whole package, at this price, with these bonuses, it won't reopen until next year, apparently. Creates genuine urgency.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, if your goal as a listener is to finally break free from writing those cliche suspense loops, if you want to start producing genuinely dark, terrifying orchestral cues on demand,
Cues that actually excite those demanding indie filmmakers and horror game developers.
then based on this blueprint, the path seems incredibly well engineered for success.
And think about the future value. Mastering these complex elements, the deep orchestrational psychology, the granular sound design we talked about, that frame-accurate cinematic timing, this system provides the toolset not just for getting work in today's industry.
But for what's coming next?
Exactly. Think about the evolving media landscape. VR horror games are becoming way more sophisticated. Interactive theater experiences are using dynamic sound. These platforms demand dynamically layered, location-aware scoring. They need those advanced spatial manipulation techniques for Module 6 and 7, the subtle psychological cues from Module 10, the precision timing for Module 9. This system isn't just teaching current skills, it feels like it's building the foundation for tackling tomorrow's scoring challenges head-on. That specialized knowledge, that's career longevity.